What's up guys, my name is Tony, and today I'm going to give you a quick and painless guide on installing Artix Linux. Artix Linux is an Arch-based distro that allows you to choose alternative init systems to systemd. This is great because if you want to experiment with a different init system, but still want to reap the benefits of the AUR in Arch's rolling release model, Artix is a perfect solution. But even if you just want a solid Arch installation without worrying about your init system, 99% of the steps in this guide will still work for you. We're also going to go over how to encrypt your drive today. At the end of this guide, you will no longer be allergic to the terminal, and you'll be ready to install Artix Linux on your own system and tell all of your friends that you use Artix, by the way. The first thing we need to do is download our ISO, so we'll head over to artixlinux.org and navigate to the Downloads page. As we see here, there are several ISO images that contain various desktop environments with their respective init system variants. Since we don't want to use any of these desktop environments today, we're going to choose this Artix base OpenRC ISO. Once we have our USB plugged in and our ISO is loaded, we can go ahead and navigate down to this From Stick HDD option and hit enter on this GRUB menu. Alright, so for this login screen we're going to want to type root and the password is going to be Artix. And we are loaded into the Artix live CD. So let's go ahead and clear that terminal. And instead of typing clear, if you really want to, you can just hit Control L and that'll also clear the terminal. Alright, the first step of this installation is to confirm our internet connection is working. I highly suggest you use an Ethernet connection, but if you don't have access to an Ethernet connection, I will provide a link to the Wi-Fi guide below the subscribe button. So let's go ahead and confirm our internet connection by typing ping-c space 4 artixlinux.org. And we see that our internet connection is confirmed, so we can move on to partitioning the disks. And at this point I want to bring your attention to the Artix installation wiki. This wiki is very well written and you can follow along with it in this tutorial. A link will be provided below the subscribe button. So we'll go ahead and type lsblk to confirm the name of our drive today. And we do see it is SDA, which is standard because I am on a virtual machine. If you follow my channel, you know I'm a big fan of the cfdisk tool, and the Arch wiki recommends using fdisk. However, the Artix wiki recommends cfdisk, just like me. So we'll type cfdisk/dev/sda and hit enter. For the label type, we're going to select GPT, just like in our installation of Gentoo, because this is a UEFI system. Now in cfdisk, we're going to create two partitions. First, we'll hit enter and type 1G to create a 1 GB boot partition. And using the arrow keys, we'll hit down and enter again to create our root partition with the remainder of the space. Using the arrow keys, we will navigate to right and hit enter, yes, enter, and quit. And we'll clear the terminal. To confirm our partition scheme, we'll type lsblk one more time, and we do see that it is correct. We have SDA1 and SDA2, so we can move on to making the file systems. Since we are encrypting our root partition today, we're going to be using the Luke's Encryption page on the Arch Linux wiki as a source of truth. A link will be provided below the subscribe button. So we can clear this, and we'll type crypt setup-v luks capital F format /dev/sda2. And we're going to type yes in capital letters to confirm it. Now we get to create a password for our encrypted drive, and since today's video is just a tutorial, I'm going to use 1234 as the password. You need to use a secure password, otherwise it will be prone to brute force attacks, rendering the encryption useless. And this may take a while, so I will see you in a minute. Now that that's set up, to actually open that, we can run this crypt setup open command. And it says to use root here as the name, but we're going to use crypt root as the name to be more explicit. So we'll type crypt setup open /dev/sda2 crypt root. And we'll enter that password. And we are in. To confirm that, let's run lsblk, and we do see under SDA2 we have a crypt root, which is our decrypted partition. Now we can make the file system for it by typing mkfs.ext4/dev/mapper/crypt root and hit enter. Alright, now we can move on to mounting our file systems. So we'll type mount/dev/mapper/crypt root space mnt. And for our boot partition, let's make that directory by typing mkdir/mnt/boot. To make our boot file system, we'll type mkfs.fat-f32-dev-sda1. And now we can mount that by typing mount/dev/sda1 mnt boot. And let's quickly confirm one more time with lsblk. And as we see, we have SDA1 that is mounted to our boot file system, and crypt root, which is mounted to our root file system. Now we can actually install Linux on our system. Over at the Artix wiki, we see it recommends these packages here for OpenRC. So we're going to go ahead and type base/strap/mnt base devil OpenRC elognd-OpenRC. And we'll hit enter. And this might take a while because it is 150 packages, so I will see you in a minute. Alright, that is done, so we can clear the terminal. And we'll go ahead and install the Linux kernel by typing base/strap/mnt Linux firmware. And if you have a relatively new sound card, let's type soft firmware. And let's add some other fun stuff here. We're going to need a boot manager, so let's type GRUB. We are on a UEFI system, let's use EFI boot mgr. And we're going to need network manager, so let's type network manager. And since we're on OpenRC, we need the OpenRC variant of that, so network manager-OpenRC. And we need a text editor, so let's type vim. And we need to sneak this into the installation somehow, so let's type Neofetch right now. Alright, that looks good, so let's let that rip. And that's another 35 packages, so I will see you in a minute. Alright, Linux is officially installed, so we can clear the terminal. And since we are on an encrypted partition, we're going to need to add two more things here, and that is going to be base/strap/mnt lvm2 encrypt setup. Alright, that's good to go. And the last thing we need to do before we enter our Chroot environment is generate the Fstab. Now on vanilla Arch Linux, the command for that is gen fstab, but since I'm using Artix, by the way, the command I'm going to use is fstabgen. So we'll type fstabgen -U for the UIDs /mnt, and we're going to output the contents of that command into the file mount etc fstab. And to confirm that, we could just type cat mount etc fstab, and there you go. It's printed out the correct fstab. We have our root partition, which is encrypted, and our boot partition. Alright, now we can actually enter our Artix environment by typing artix-chroot/mnt. And we are ready to configure the base system. First, let's set our time zone by typing ln-sf/user/share/zoneinfo. And for me in my situation, I'm going to type America and Los Angeles. And let's link this to etc local time. Let's confirm that worked by typing date, and that looks accurate. Now to sync our hardware clock, we can type hwclock-sys-tohc. Alright, localization. This is often the part where people give up on the Arch installation and revert back to their plug-and-play Linux Mint setup, because it's slightly complicated. But don't worry, just follow along and we'll get our localization set up correctly in a quick and painless way. So let's open our locale.gen file by typing vim/etc/locale.gen. And for me, since I know my locale is NUS-UTF-8, I can just search that by typing /en_us and hitting enter. And I'm going to use the arrow keys to move over to this hashtag and remove it with the X key. So for you, all you need to do is find your locale and do what I just did for mine, and hit :WQ to write and quit that file, and enter. And as we see, the etc locale gen file has been written to. Now we can just run locale-gen, and there we go. One more part of the locale equation is to add our language to our locale.conf file, and we're going to do that by typing echo !lang equals $n_us.utf-8 $, and we're going to output that to etc locale.conf. Now for you, just replace NUS-UTF-8 with whatever your locale is. And let's confirm that's there by catting etc locale.conf. There it is. Alright, since we're using OpenRC, we do need to add our hostname to our etc-conf-d hostname file by typing vim/etc/conf.d/hostname. And check this out, just hit JFLCW and then type your hostname. I'm going to type mine, Artix BTW, escape :WQ to write and quit that file. And that's good to go. And let's also type echo Artix BTW, and we'll output that to etc hostname. And lastly, we need to add our hostname to our etc hosts file, and we can do that by typing vim/etc/hosts. and we'll go down to this line with the J or down key, and hit O to enter a new line in insert mode, and hit backspace twice to remove that hashtag. And let's type 127.0.0.1. We'll hit tab and type localhost, enter, and we'll do ::1, tab, just so it's lined up, localhost, enter, and then we'll do 127.0.1.1, tab, Artix btw.local domain, space Artix btw, because I'm using Artix, by the way. And we can hit escape, :WQ to write and quit that file, and we're ready to move on to creating users. Let's set a root password by typing password, PASSWD. And for the root password, it's going to be 123. I want it to be different than the encrypted hard drive password so I can show you guys that it works at the end. And let's add a user by typing user add -m -G wheel -s/bin bash Tony. And that's going to put Tony in the wheel group. Let's add a password to Tony by typing password Tony. I'm going to use 123 for that as well. Let's ensure Tony has sudo access by typing editor =vim vi sudo. And using the arrow keys or J or Control D or whatever you want to do, we need to navigate down to this line right here where it says wheel all =all all. And we can uncomment this iconic line by just hitting X twice. Alright, let's type :WQ to write and quit that file, and we're ready to move on. Alright, we're almost done, but we need to set up our encryption to work on boot, so let's start that process. We need to configure mkinit cpio. So let's do that by typing vim/etsy mkinit cpio.conf. And let's go to the hooks line by typing :55 and hitting enter. For me, this line's on line 55. If this isn't the line for you, just navigate down with the arrow keys until you see the hooks equals line. Now let's just hit A to enter insert mode at the end of the line, and just use the left arrow key a few times until we get to this block section. Let's go ahead and add encrypt and LVM2. And let's hit escape, :WQ to write and quit that file. And now that we've added those options, let's regenerate our CPIO by running mkinit cpio-P. And make sure to see the LVM2 and encrypt build hooks. We can ignore these other warnings because they don't typically apply to modern hardware. The next part of the encryption puzzle is to properly set up our bootloader, which is the most tedious process here, so stick with me. Let's first run grub-install -efi-directory =/boot-bootloader-id equals. And here you can go ahead and put any ID. I'm going to put Artix btw, because again, I'm on Artix, by the way. And we'll do that on /dev/sda. Alright, that's done. Now we need to add our UUIDs to our grub config file, and this is the hardest part to show in the tutorial, so I've come up with a pretty easy way to do this, so just follow along. Let's first open our grub file by typing vim/etsy/default/grub. And let's go down to this line here where it says grub cmd line Linux default, and let's hit Shift A to enter insert mode at the end of the line, and let's go back one and add the following to this string. Crypt device equals UUID equals, and then here's all caps, LUKS underscore UUID underscore here, :crypt root. And then we'll do space root equals UUID equals root underscore UUID underscore here. And we can quit out of this here with escape, :WQ to write and quit that file. So basically what we're doing there is we're putting placeholders for now so that we can replace those placeholders with the actual UUIDs of our encrypted device and our decrypted partition. So let's put in our UUIDs to those placeholders by typing sed-i:\s pipe LUKS underscore UUID here pipe $, and now we're going to get those values by doing parenthesis BLKID-O value-S UUID/dev/SDA2, close that parentheses, and one more pipe and another double quote to end that string, and we're going to run that sed command on etsy default grub. And let's also do that for the root UUID by doing sed-i:\s pipe root underscore UUID here, because that's the name of the placeholder we used for the root UUID. And we'll do again, $blkid-o value-s UUID/dev/mapper/crypt root, and then we'll close that parenthesis. We'll put one more pipe there and another quote to end that string. And again, we're going to sed this file etc default grub. Alright, now that the hard part is over, let's go ahead and verify that looks good by just opening that file with vim again. So vim etc default grub. And yeah, here we see the crypt device, the UUID, and there's that UUID from the encrypted partition. And we see the root UUID for the decrypted partition. So that looks good. And honestly, I couldn't think of an easier way to show that to you guys in a tutorial. For me, I'm just somebody who would have just echoed those UUIDs to this file and then using vim just yank and paste them, etc. But using these sed commands, it's a lot easier to show you how to do it. Alright, let's quit out of that file by just typing :q, and let's clear the terminal. Now we can finally tell grub to make the config, so let's do grub-mkconfig-o/boot/grub/grub.cfg. And there we go. Once again, we can ignore that OS prober error because we're not dual booting. Alright, now that grub is installed, we can go ahead and do two more things before rebooting, and one of them is to enable Network Manager on boot. So let's type rc-update add N network M manager default. And there we go, that's added to run level. And let's do the same thing with elogin-d so that we can log into DWM from our Tony user that we created earlier by typing rc-update add elogin-d default. And there we go, that's added. Alright, lastly, we just need to install some tools so that our system is actually usable in a meaningful way. So let's su into Tony here by typing su Tony. And let's run sudo pacman-syu exorg x in it so we can use start x to open DWM. And let's get a browser here, and I'm going to go with Firefox. And let's get git so we can download DWM. And our password there. And let's go ahead and accept the defaults here for all this stuff. 215 packages, so I will see you in a minute. Alright, that's finished and that's ready to go, so move on to the next step. To stay on theme here with the minimalist setup, I'm going to use just a few tools from the team over at suckless.org, and this is just software that's based on their ideology of do one thing and do it well. So let's build out some more tools here. Let's go ahead and cd into our home directory, and let's create a config folder here by typing mkdir artix.files, and let's cd into that one. And now we can download DWM, ST, and dmenu, which are three tools we're going to be using today for our minimal build. And that's just a window manager, a application launcher tool, and a very minimal terminal emulator. So first, let's download those by typing git clone git://git.suckless.org/dwm. And let's put that in the DWM folder. Alright, let's do the same thing with ST, git clone git://git.suckless.org/st. Alright, and let's finally do the same thing with dmenu. So git clone git//git.suckless.org/dmenu. Alright, so now we just need to build these tools. So let's cd into DWM, and let's run sudo make clean install. Perfect. Let's do the same for ST by doing cd://st, and we'll do sudo make clean install. Alright, let's do the same thing for dmenu here, so cd://dmenu, sudo make clean install, and that's it, they're all installed. So let's cd back into our home directory by typing cd. The last thing we need to do is add DWM to our xinitrc file, but that file doesn't exist yet, so let's create it by typing touch.xinitrc. And let's just run echo quote exec DWM quote greater than .xinitrc. And finally, it's time to reboot the system. So let's exit out of Tony, and now we're going to exit out of root. So now we're back into the live CD, so we can lsblk, and we can unmount some of these drives by typing umount-a, and that's good to go. We're finally ready to reboot the system. So let's just type reboot. And we see grub here, so that looks like that's a good sign. Oh, beautiful. We are prompted for that password to access that crypt root volume, and at the top of the episode, if you remember, I made that password 1234. And that is amazing. Look at that. We are into our encrypted drive. So let's test our login by typing in Tony, password for that, and we're in. We're actually in our Artix, by the way, system. Perfect. Let's go ahead and enter our graphical environment by typing start X. And there you go. Beautiful, blazingly fast DWM startup. So let's tinker around with some of this stuff. Let's type Alt-P to open up D menu and start typing Firefox and hit enter. And there you go. There's Firefox with that corporate art. Love to see that. Let's go ahead and swap tags here by hitting Alt-2 to switch to the second tag. And let's open up a terminal with Alt-Shift-Enter. And there you have it. DWM, Firefox, ST, D menu, Artix Linux, OpenRC has all been installed with an encrypted drive. Thank you for checking out this guide, and it wouldn't be a proper install video without Obligatory Neofetch.